NASA officials announced on Wednesday that they must decide by the end of August whether to bring two astronauts back to Earth aboard Boeing's Starliner or use a SpaceX vehicle instead. Astronauts Barry Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams launched aboard the Starliner on June 5 for what was supposed to be an 8-day stay at the International Space Station ISS. However, their return has been delayed due to thruster failures that occurred during the spacecraft's first crewed mission to the ISS. NASA officials stated during the Wednesday press conference that they are still analyzing thruster data but are nearing a decision on whether to proceed with Starliner or switch to SpaceX. Ken Bowersox, Deputy Administrator of NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate, said, "We are getting to the point where we really need to make a decision by the last week of August, if not sooner." He added that while the astronauts are making the most of their extra time on the ISS, they are undoubtedly eager for a decision. Just like the rest of the team, the primary concern revolves around the propulsion system. A NASA official noted, "Our biggest concern is a successful deorbit burn." Bowersox mentioned that Boeing has been involved in very candid discussions and that the aerospace giant is 100% behind their vehicle. If NASA decides not to use Starliner, Boeing's competitor, Elon Musk's SpaceX, could launch its Crew 9 mission to the ISS on September 24 with only 2 astronauts instead of the usual 4. The Crew Dragon capsule could then bring Wilmore and Williams back to Earth in February 2025, which would be a significant embarrassment for Boeing. NASA Chief Astronaut Joe Acoba mentioned that Wilmore and Williams were prepared for the possibility that the mission, being a test flight, might not be perfect. Human spaceflight is inherently risky, and as astronauts, we accept that as part of the job, he said. They are professional astronauts and are doing great. Mission Commander Wilmore had already spent 178 days in space before the Boeing mission, while pilot Williams had even more experience, with 322 days in space. In the event of an emergency at the ISS, Bowersox said Starliner could still be used to bring the astronauts home. "We think it's a reasonable risk to put Butch and Suni in that vehicle in an emergency," he said. If Starliner returns to Earth uncrewed, an alternative in an emergency could be to use the 4-person SpaceX Dragon capsule currently docked at the ISS, though this would mean Wilmore and Williams would have to make the return trip without suits. Joel Montalbano, Deputy Administrator of NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate, assured that when Crew 9 arrives, we will have suits for them. The astronauts would then return home in Crew 9 with their suits. If Wilmore and Williams return with SpaceX, it would mark the most significant setback for Boeing's space program to date. Both Boeing and SpaceX were awarded multi-billion-dollar contracts in 2014 to provide transportation to the ISS following the end of the Space Shuttle program in 2011, which had left the US reliant on Russian Soyuz rockets for crew transport. SpaceX successfully completed its first crewed test in 2020 and has since transported dozens of astronauts.